friends, and welcome to another episode of Your Bish Therapist podcast. And not just any episode. We have my bestie and yours back from Besties by Caitlin. Caitlin Marshall, welcome. So happy to have you back,
Melissa.
girl.
I'm always
Hi,
happy
dear.
to be back. Okay, you and I will sit and talk for ages, and I'm going to apologize to listeners. I am battling. Normally, I call it the pre-K plague because some child has brought it this way to me. I feel like it's actually rude to get any type of bug or get sick during the summer. It's not supposed to happen then, but
Right.
my child's going into
It is
kindergarten,
rude.
so I got to find a new name. But I apologize that I sound like Chucky from Rugrats.
No,
who I feel like.
You literally, like, just because I know your voice, I can tell that you're sick. But, like, first of all, let me start by saying, before we get into our chit chat, is that this is the season finale of Your Bish Therapist.
Woo!
And I'm so excited to have Caitlin with me for this momentous episode. And don't worry, for people listening, I will be back after a break. I just don't know when. So, I'm super grateful that you're here. But today we're going to be talking about House of Stasi because you were invited to the event and all of that. And you have such interesting things to say. But you were telling me beforehand that you went and did that while you were recovering, like literally 24 hours from strep throat.
So that was when I went to the Get Real event. Back in, maybe that was April, May. They're all blending together, but yes, I was supposed to get on a plane in 28 hours, I believe it was. And it's like, there's something wrong with my throat. And I was like, I see white spots. And so run to urgent care. And I'm like, y'all, please tell me it's not that. And they call me back, call me within an hour. And I didn't curse at the person who gave me the results. I just cursed in general. And I was like, you probably shouldn't say, oh, shit, to this poor person having to deliver this. And they said, if you start the antibiotics, then within 24 hours, you can go back to work. And I had to be on a plane in 26 hours. So I was like, get me the antibiotics. And I powered through. I mean, I wasn't contagious anymore. That was the most important part. But yes,
well, right.
that was a long day.
Right. You do things responsibly. You're not going to these events being a plague rat.
No.
But like you have this like tenacity and perseverance where like you were treated for 24 hours and you were like in the sun for 9 hours and just like showed up. And like, here's the thing that people probably don't know about you, but you're a hustler. You work so hard. You take what you do so seriously. And I really respect it because in this arena that we're in, professionalism isn't always top of the list, shall we say.
Right.
And so you are a consummate professional and you can just be looking flawless, but inside just like quietly perishing and no one will ever know. And I think that's amazing.
First of all, you are so kind. And same for you because you're dealing with far more than I ever am internally on a daily basis. So I want to give you your flowers as well. And I try to keep it as professional, but also fun as possible because, with what we do, you can either just have it be its own little pocket world for yourself and go live your life, or you can try and make a career out of it. And that's what I've been spending. I guess it's about 4 years now trying to do. So took time.
To think about that, because that's kind of, when I started like 4 years ago, and to see you get invited to all these events, you do all these glamorous things. And I'm just always cheering you on and so happy for you because truly no one deserves it more than you. You work so hard. You hustle and your content is so good. We joke about this all the time. It's like, I look at your content and I'm like, this bitch could never, but I'm so like, good for you. I'm sure, but listen, one day this girl will evolve slowly but surely. It's happening. And so, Caitlin you're a good North Star for me in terms of all of this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
For real.
You flatter me so. Oh my gosh.
But
please.
It's true. It's true. And you know what? The audience loves you too, because last time you were on, a lot of people listened. And I was like, okay,
oh, good.
Girl. Yeah, people are
that.
really loving you, girl. So today we're going to be talking House of Stasi. And before we get into the actual show, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your experience. You were invited to, I don't even know what it's called. Is it upfronts? Is it just,
oh, no.
tell us.
Yeah.
Tell us what you were invited to, what it is.
It was a premiere party, and it was in New York at the Corner Store restaurant, which I later found out that apparently that's one of Taylor Swift's favorite restaurants. And it's a really small little spot. Yeah, it was really cute. I didn't know what to expect going in. You never really do with these type of things. And it was a very, very intimate event. And, I had met Stassi once before at the Get Real event, but that thing is enormous. It's kind of like a one-day only version of BravoCon with Hulu is the best way I could describe it. It was everywhere you looked. It was just like almost overstimulating at a certain point, but it was amazing. But when I went in, because I'll tell anyone who's hoping to be able to do those type of things, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you for getting your content, create your shot list, get there at least 15 minutes before it's supposed to start so you can get atmosphere content. Because once it starts, you're either going to be right in the middle of it, wanting to chat with people, get other types of content, or you're trying to frantically figure out how to get the best shot of this and that without a ton of people in front of it. So that's number one. And, going in, they had their step and repeat. And again, I wasn't sure exactly how many people would be there, but it was a very, very small event. They had an aura photographer, which I'd always wanted to do. I'm so into the woo-woo spiritual stuff. I love it.
Oh
it
my
was
gosh,
so
I
cool.
love that. Can you share what color was your aura?
So I was wearing this, since it was a Stassi event, I knew, okay, you got to wear Stassi blue, right? That kind of very
naturally.
Sky blue color. Yes. And so at first I was thinking, was the color of my dress making it, look a certain way? I wish I had it on me, but it was light blue and white, like radiating out. It almost looked like this giant halo on my head. And I was like, wow, I look more like an angel than I actually am here. What is she going to say? And I'm going to be honest. I think more people for events should do that type of thing, whether it be the aura photography, anything where you get your cards read, maybe an astrologer, things like that, because I cannot explain to you. I still get nervous before I go to these events. And then after, I'll have one glass of wine, and within 15 minutes, I am a golden retriever running around to everyone. So it really grounded me before it all started. And I felt like I kind of had a different footing because of it. I thought it was fantastic. And then the entire cast shows up, and really there were only about, I'm going to guess 6 or so of us content creators there, maybe a few more, but there were people like, I didn't know Dumois was there because, she's anonymous. And there were a lot of the big, the big publications there. And it was really cool. You got to actually talk with the cast, and you felt like you belonged in the room with everyone. Yeah. And it was just a very fun, intimate party. I haven't been to one like that before that was that small and that much fun. And I've been to a lot of really fun ones.
Yeah, you do. You get invited to a lot of really fun things. But I just imagine like how cool that must have been to be in this world of, content creation, reality TV, and to be meeting Stassi. Because the rest of the cast, by the way, of House of Stasi, I mean, it's a really solid cast. It's, one of the things I will say, I think this show is extremely well done, extremely well produced, excellent cast. So can you share some of like what your experiences were, like meeting some of the cast and just like how that felt? Because for me, I don't get invited to those things. I live on the East Coast, and I'm just like, that must be so neat to, I don't know, just interact with these people that you've watched for so long. How cool.
Yeah. So what's really interesting, Taylor Strecker, who is Stassi's best friend, and she has the podcast with her. I had actually been listening to Taylor Strecker when she was on satellite radio on Sirius XM doing Cosmopolitan Radio back when I was 20 years old in Oklahoma. So I knew who Taylor Strecker was before I ever even heard the name Stassi Schroeder, right? And I was really excited to get to meet her. And I listened to Taylor back when she was married to a man. I listened when she got divorced, and then she got together with her wife now. They call her Teddy on the show, but her name's also Taylor. It made it less confusing. And Yeah,
okay.
her name's actually Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Because I was like, why are they? There were a couple moments where they were saying Tay, and I was like, who's Tay? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So you just cleared that up for me. Very good. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It would be confusing. Yeah. And listen, I want to also say this. I know that there has been a very divided reaction to the show. It's been very polarizing. And I also want to make this clear. I am not paid by anyone to promote the show. I was invited to the event and I got to enjoy it and get some content. And that really was my role in all of that. So anything I have to say about it that's positive, it's because that's how I feel. I just want to make that clear because I've been accused multiple times. They must be paying you. And I'm like, girl, I wish, but no, I'm not being paid by anyone to share my opinion on this.
The thing I love about you is that you're not a stan to anybody. We both kind of share that in common where we're not going to support something just because of being paid or whatever. Well, I get paid by nobody ever, just to be really clear about that. But like, you know, I think that's an important statement to make where it's like the things that we're going to talk about, it's your true opinions. It's my true opinions. You're not on the payroll. I'm not on the payroll. And, you know, I think that's really important. And I do love that about
Agreed.
you.
And you as well. I mean, you know, everybody's a human being at the end of the day. And we have to remember reality stars are also human beings. So human beings are fallible. That's just the way it is.
And that's why we love to watch, isn't it? It's like, you know, reality. Here's the thing, you know, as a therapist and, you know, like I talk a lot about like healthy communication and things like that. But the fact of the matter is reality TV, if it were healthy, we wouldn't watch it. We wouldn't want to watch it. It probably wouldn't be incredibly interesting. So it's like this thing we love. You know, we have to remember these people are human. And I think for me, what I'm most excited to talk about with this is that there's a lot of family dynamic stuff with Stassi that I think helps to give a lot of rich context to her behaviors and to her life. And so, you know, so when you went to I'm sorry, I keep saying the wrong thing.
Premiere
party. What were some of the exciting moments, some of the takeaways? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, Stassi got on the mic and she was very emotional in a way that you could tell there was a lot of heart and soul put into this and that there was a lot of work that was done to try and get this off the ground and get it done. And I was standing there just talking with her and she was feeling, again, emotional about it. And you know, I know what it's like to be excited, anxious, all the things about something you've worked really hard on. And sometimes just simply having someone say, so what are you excited about with it is what I asked her. What are you most looking forward to? And she kind of stopped and she said, you know, I am so excited for people to see who is actually in my life today, who I spend my time with, the people I love, my children, my family, and really see what's happening in my life now as opposed to what was happening before. And, you know, the thing that is undeniable about her as a person is when you stand there and talk with her, she's extremely grounded. You feel like you already know each other. You don't feel like you're talking to someone who is some major reality star, influencer, all of the things. And that's something that's, I very much appreciate about someone in this field, especially. There are only a few that I could say for certain I feel are very much that way. Like Stassi, Heather Gay is one of them. There are several that I know I'm going to be saying, oh yeah, and this person and that person. My brain's moving a little slower today for certain reasons. But
buffering.
It is, exactly. We got to widen the bandwidth. But yeah, oh my gosh. But yeah, I just really, my takeaways from it were that they are a true, real friend group. It's not something where, you know, how on Housewives and things like that, we'll see someone bring in like, this is my friend from so-and-so. And it's like, sure, I'm so sure.
For example, like Shannon brought in her friend Carmela, and it's like, Shannon, if you think any of us believe for 1 second that you would have actually been friends with Carmela, you are underestimating the audience's intelligence. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
It's like, don't see you two going and grabbing brunch, but okay. But yeah, I felt that, you know, I knew after being around them, whatever we were getting was going to be quite authentic, is what I can say personally.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk about the show because, so for those who haven't watched it, it is on Hulu. It is 8 episodes. And each episode, like, I really like the production in terms of within the episodes, they did like, part 1, part 2, part 3. And they kind of really broke it up into almost like, how podcasts have chapters. It's like chapters, but for reality TV, which I was like, that's really cool. One of the things that I really loved about it is like, I love when production, they would do those cute little like asterisks or like someone would say something and it would be like, spoiler alert, it did not go this way or something like that. So I just felt like the production value of it was like really spot on and like really, really wonderful. And for those of you who just kind of to remind everyone, I think that, Stassi kept talking about throughout this whole time being canceled because this is one of the important parts. Stassi in 2020, she was on Vanderpump Rules and she and Kristen Doty were fired.
It was brought to light in 2020 and they did this back, I want to say in like 2018-ish. If I recall, but it was 2020 that it all came out.
In 2020, it came to fruition what happened. They were fired by Bravo after they falsely reported African-American castmate Faye Stowers to police for a crime that she did not commit. And so what you heard throughout a lot of House of Stasi is her talking about being canceled, her talking with some women of color from Vanderpump Villa. And I think that one of the most important things to keep in mind is that with human behavior, sometimes things happen when we make a mistake and we acknowledge the mistake. Is sometimes humans can tend to overcorrect or sometimes they can undercorrect. And for me, what I saw with Stassi is that she has a little bit more work to do with this aspect. However, it's important to remember that she's human and most people don't go from making mistakes regarding like really sensitive racial, things. We don't expect her to be perfect. However, I do just want to point out that I think, when she talks about being canceled a lot, I think it might be more productive for her to focus on her stuff rather than the cancellation. But I can tell that she feels so at home on reality TV that it's like a point of contention for her. It's a really soft spot. And when Stassi is really hurt by something, she tends to talk about it a lot. It sounds like she needs to process that because she is very anti-therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and first, I do want to say I feel that they needed to have a more in-depth conversation than what was shown. And I would be surprised if Stassi disagreed with my thought on that, to be honest. I think this is where we have to ask certain questions because this has been happening a lot. And of course, making bad choices and bad behavior has consequences, and that's the way it goes.
Right.
And we've seen so many people get quote unquote canceled for this or that. And there's a certain point where you wonder, okay, so is this person supposed to go live their life in obscurity forever? Or, are they supposed to do the work, make whatever changes and try to show that they've made these changes through actionable efforts, right? And quite frankly, I also feel that that's not even, especially on this particular subject, a question for anyone who looks like us in particular. But, it's not our place to answer. That said, I do feel that I would say people of color, maybe to feel a sense of safety within the show, I think they also needed to have a more in-depth conversation. Because I can imagine if I were one of those girls, I would have been like, okay, so how come you didn't tell me about it? How come? And we don't know what all was edited. But that said, I do believe there should have been a more in-depth conversation. And I think part of it, my guess, is maybe they were thinking, okay, well, let's not, continually bring it up. But the cancellation is continually brought up. So if we're going to talk about that, then fully address it, in my opinion.
Right. And that's the part that I would tend to agree with. It's less about being canceled and more about the consequences of her behaviors. And so I think as humans, what I saw with Stassi, which I do appreciate, is she is working on taking accountability in ways that she has struggled to in the past, right? And it's hard taking accountability. And by the way, I think that's why she is a little bit fearful of therapy, because it's hard to talk about like our mistakes, our deepest pains and wounds, and have someone say to us, okay, what was your role in that, right? Listen, I go to therapy. So not only am I a therapist, but I go to therapy every single week. And at the end of the session, my therapist says, see you next week. And I say, until one of us dies. That is literally, for me, that is what is necessary. So what I observed from watching House of Stasi is that Stassi and Beau have a lot of avoidance in terms of problem solving, communication. They really have an avoidant style. And with avoidance, what is wild about that is the act of avoiding actually worsens anxiety, actually worsens feelings of feeling, well, I did something wrong. And so what happens is there's a difference between appropriate shame and toxic shame. Appropriate shame is where we make a mistake, we do something wrong, we say, okay, I feel badly about this, which is an appropriate response. And here's what like you said, actionable change. Here's what I need to do going forward. But with avoidance, that process is interrupted. And then it can turn into what's called a toxic shame, which is internalizing feelings of like, I'm inherently bad. I'm inherently a problem. And then that leads to acting out behaviors. So listen, I don't know Stassi, and I'm not here to totally psychoanalyze her, even though that's kind of what I do. But I think that she sometimes doesn't realize how she gets in her own way, because to me, there's this through line of how it's all connected. So for example, I saw a theme here of where for Stassi, safety and comfort is control. So controlling what Beau's doing, controlling the household, having this family unit because she didn't have that growing up. But here's the thing, and this is coming from a reformed control freak, okay? I am type A plus, okay? Like, I know of what I speak. And when we are trying to control things, it's just our way to try to make us feel like we have power over things that we do not. And I think that what ends up happening is we hold on so tight to this control that we are actually putting an invisible cage around ourselves and don't know it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It pushes everything else away from you that you're also wanting to keep dear.
Yes, that's right. And the more we grasp on to what doesn't serve us, the more those things that matter slip through our fingers, because we're trying so hard to control things that we can't control. What I've learned, not only as a therapist, but in therapy, is the only things we can control is us, our thoughts, feelings, reactions, and behaviors. Like, that is literally the extent of it. But I can see how her family of origin stuff leads her to want this safe life so badly that she's trying to control things in ways that sometimes make her look in ways that I don't think are accurate. So for example, I think Stassi can be a really like loving, wonderful person, but when she's trying to hold on to control, it makes her seem not as loving or attentive, like all the things I actually think she probably is behind the scenes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I can empathize with her on that in a lot of ways, because I would say I'm like an A-B control freak, type A-B. Because, it depends on how bad my ADHD is for the day. But that said, especially when it comes to when you have a family and their kids and there is responsibility financially, and especially I would assume after her removal, cancellation, her consequences, that there's also this fear of losing control of things in that regard again as well.
Bingo.
I think there was this level of her trying to make sure everyone was doing their job, because they're really the only other person that has been on, well, there were two other people that have truly been on reality TV casts prior to this, and that's Katie and Christina. And Beau had, a few seasons with her on Vanderpump Rules. I think she had this fear that it wasn't going to be enough for the network, for the audience. And so you could see that she was trying so hard to pull strings with people and it kept backfiring. because you could see this fear that it's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be enough. And it was this perfectionism, I think, that creeped in. And people took it, in my opinion, the wrong way. I feel like she was not trying to be an asshole. I felt like she was trying to say, like, guys, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Like, clock in. We can go clock out whenever, but let's clock in right now, please. We have all these cameras around us.
Right. And like, this is the job that we're here to do. And I fully agree with you. I think a lot of folks misunderstand women who have anxious control issues. It can appear
that's
as
me.
Girl, same. Girl, same.
That's me.
And so I have a lot of empathy for where it comes from. And I think in some ways she really is misunderstood, because what I recognize is this anxious level of exactly what you said. If I say the wrong thing, if I do the wrong thing, will I lose this opportunity? Which is, because that's got to be scary, to be the breadwinner of your family and to lose your opportunities. And again, it's consequences over actions, but that doesn't mean that didn't create psychological distress for her, right?
Exactly.
Yes, the consequences needed to happen. We all cannot escape consequences, but I feel for her in how I think she internalized that and how it presents in her behaviors. And what I would love to say to Stassi is that please don't be afraid of therapy, because if you want to truly be in control and you truly want to be your best self, we got to take that armor down and be willing to be vulnerable, which, listen, I hate that too. I feel like I relate to Stassi a lot. I don't like being vulnerable. It makes me crazy. One of the things she said that I wanted to speak to is she said to somebody, I hate therapy because you feel like shit afterwards. And one thing that I really want to normalize is, sometimes that's true. We don't always go to therapy and come out clicking our heels and saying, yay, I'm cured, right? Like, it gets worse before it gets better, especially the longer you wait and the more unresolved issues there are, the harder it becomes to untangle. And so I just say this as a huge proponent of therapy. Obviously, I know I'm biased as a therapist and someone who loves therapy. But I do want to remind, whether it's Stassi or anyone listening to this, is that therapy with the right person. You have to have trust. You have to have safety. You have to be with the right person. It will literally set you free. I thought I was free, but then I ended up controlling everything. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I literally, I just put my hands up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then that's when I started to feel free. So what I'm saying is I recognize the fear from her. I recognize it, and I wish that she would give herself the gift of letting that go or taking the burden off of herself, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I understand. When I really started like weekly therapy, this was in 2022, I want to say. And I was in therapy from 2022 to 2025 until my therapist said, well, baby girl, I think we're good for now. I'm always here. And then I had to start back up after the trauma with my son, with his accident.
Yes.
But I remember, especially at first, it was not fun to go. I did not look forward to it. And, eventually there were little things where I felt like maybe I have had a win here and there with adjustments I make in how I respond to this and that, because the pride you feel when you go, I didn't get reactive in that moment. I stayed calm when normally I'd be like, and another thing,
right.
Yes. And it was almost like after 2 years, there was one day that my therapist was like, wait, Caitlin, wait, do you see all the things you just did when you told me about this incident? You stopped there because I really struggled with things like self-blame for every little thing. And, I would struggle with then having a lot of issues with control and, which is my very large reason as to why I do not like to fly on airplanes, because I'm not in control of it. No one wants me to be, but...
Can I say I have a terrifying fear of flying because of control? Terrifying to the point where I have not flown since before the pandemic. It is that, I know, it's like literally something I have to work on in therapy. But to your point, when you realize the ways the control issues like permeate your life, it's like, oh my gosh, we got to challenge this because that's the only thing that makes it better, really.
Yes. And honestly, it felt like there was just that day and suddenly it was like, oh, I have had there has been a lot of change and a lot of improvements and, things like that. And me recognizing, because I had a therapist who was so great, she would educate me as well as give me the talk therapy. She would truly provide education, which I thought was great because that's my style is I need to have a why,
Totally. But
and I think for her, she'd have whys.
Right.
Answered.
It's hard to change something if you don't know what it is and why it's happening. And that's, for me, therapy is truly empowering because you don't just learn what you're doing, but you learn why you're doing it and how to do it differently. And one of the things I talk a lot about on this podcast is acting opposite, where with anxiety, the most crucial thing that we have to do is challenge it. Because if we don't challenge it and we avoid it, that actually reinforces the anxiety. And so I could see her doing that throughout this. But the other interesting thing that we definitely have to talk about is her mom. Her mom. Dana. So something that I noticed happening like a lot was something called triangulation. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what that is. So triangulation is a communication and a manipulation tactic where one person brings in a third party into a conflict instead of dealing with the other person directly. And we saw a lot of triangulation on House of Stasi. And it's not just, it's like when you think of a triangle, you think of three people, but you can pull more people into things. It's not just the three. So it turns a two-person interaction into a triangle, but the purpose of it is to control the narrative, avoid accountability, and create division. And so one of the things that I noticed with Stassi's mom, which is really important context because it does give me a lot of empathy for her, is she has two siblings. Each of them have different fathers. And it sounds like her dad I couldn't find a lot of information about her dad, but it sounds like her upbringing was chaotic and unstable. And when she started to earn money on Vanderpump Rules, her mom quit her job and was like, you're taking care of me now. And I think that's really important because Stassi has this overwhelming feeling that she has to take care of other people. And I personally believe that that's where this comes from, personally.
I agree.
But one of the things that I really, really noticed is Dana uses the two siblings to gang up and triangulate against Stassi. Like for sure. And when she says, I feel like I'm insane, this is what triangulation does, right? It's her mother. And by the way, the siblings, I don't think are adept enough to be aware of and understand what the mother is doing. But a parent
I think Georgie caught on for a second. I do want to say that. I think Georgie caught on for a second during one argument, I will say. I think she was starting to catch on. Actually, you're right.
I think at the end, when Georgie started sticking up for Stassi, I think she started to realize, because there was this moment where it was like Stassi across the table and Dana and Georgie and Nikolai on the other side of the table. And I was like, this woman is getting her children to try to manipulate Stassi. And that's why Stassi says she feels insane. Because it will make you feel insane when there are people being like, no, this is you. And she's like, no, this isn't me. Like, at all. So I just want to tell Stassi, you're right. You're right. You are right, girl. That your mom is pulling some stuff and she is pitting your siblings against you to try to bolster her points. And I think that's really unfortunate.
Yeah. And, I think it seems that Dana must have been through a lot of attempts to try to stabilize the home if she's, had more than one marriage. And it's, I imagine there's that sense of, well, I didn't get it right the first time. Maybe I can get it right the second time. And I didn't get it right the second time. So there is an aspect where, you can look at it and say, while I may not agree with how she's handling it, I think it's interesting something Georgie said in confessional, which was that the version of their mother that Stassi got was heels, professional, go-getter, all of that. And the version that she got of their mother was not that. It was her being very involved. And what's interesting is, as a mom myself, I would love to be able to have a second child, because some of the things, and it's not because of this, but what I will say is the things you learn from what you did right and wrong with your first child, there's a second chance to make another attempt. And it's almost as though she kind of was going that route, I feel like, with Georgie, in my opinion, and maybe then a different route with Nikolai, because it's interesting. The young Nikolai, we remember, who was so wise beyond his years and just would completely clock things and be so straightforward. And the Nikolai we see now, and of course, he grew up as you're supposed to.
Right.
So it's a very different person that he's grown into, again, as he should. He shouldn't be staying the same person he was when he was 10 years old. But that said, the way I just kept really getting this in my head, that there have been many attempts to get it right, and it's just been clunky, I feel like, when it came down to it.
Right. But what you just said is so important and valuable in terms of therapy, which is that each sibling, depending on birth order and age, gets a different version of the same parent. And kids that grow up in households will have different childhoods, even though they're living in the same home with the same folks. And there's a certain part of it where every parent, you have a different relationship with each one of your kids, right? Because kids, everyone's personality is unique and different and all of these things. But what I think is there's a seed of resentment because Stassi didn't get the loving mom that Georgie got. And Georgie had the benefit of having a mom where, for example, there was something that she said that really stuck out to me, and sometimes this happens in my therapist brain, which tells me it's important, is that Georgie was like, I would love to cuddle up with you right now. I'd be happy to do that. But we have to look at what's going on between you and her. And so it's like, I think that Stassi didn't get that maternal kind of love that Georgie and maybe Nikolai got. And so that's going to plant a seed of resentment, number one. Number two, I think that there's definitely a seed of resentment because of the fact that Stassi did have to take care of the family. Do you remember Kim Richards on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills?
Yes.
Kim Richards talked about having a lot of resentment that led to her drinking issues because of having to support the family, being a child star, making money, having to support in ways that Kyle, who was the youngest sibling, didn't have to experience. And that's simply because of birth order. And so I think what I am seeing in this family dynamic is that when Stassi and her mom have a conflict, Dana pulls Nikolai in to be her mouthpiece. And Georgie, I think, is starting to see, as you mentioned, and starting to see and starting to realize. And you could tell how much that meant to Stassi when Georgie was actually supporting her, because what happens with folks like this, Stassi is right in this situation where her mom is behaving in ways that is manipulative and is triangulation. But then what happens is, because survivors, we feel we're right in this instance, we apply that to every other instance. And unfortunately, girl, Stassi's not always right. When on the Queen Mary, when she was arguing with Beau and she's like, you just need to say that I'm right. And it's like, here, this is misdirected, okay? It's misdirected. No, but seriously, this is what happens when you don't deal with things. It gets misdirected and it comes out sideways, because not everybody always has to tell us that we're right. But her mom probably should. So because she doesn't, she looks for it in all of these other people who aren't able to give that to her, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think there has been a very strong element of Dana's, her mother, her kids having to mother her. Because I would imagine, I've been through a divorce. If your parent's going through a divorce and they are a highly emotional and have some emotional immaturity, you are expected to then pick them up when they're supposed to be the ones picking you up as a child through the worst moments. And I think they've had to do a lot of picking up for Dana. I think all three of them have, if I'm honest.
Yeah. And so there's a name for that. It's called parentification. And parentification is when, as a child, you are responsible for your parent, either emotionally, financially, psychologically, all of the above. And so I think, unfortunately, Stassi and the rest of the kids have been parentified. And because she is the eldest daughter, she experienced the weight of the trauma of the parentification. And so the other thing for me is how this creeps into her relationship with Beau. Because what I notice is Stassi and Beau both have a very avoidant style. And what bums me out is I think that they have like really good, solid love there. But what I've noticed about their communication styles is that it is unsustainable. So when you continue to sweep things under the rug, what ends up happening is soon the rug is up to the ceiling and you can't see past it. And it becomes a literal obstacle. And so by not talking about issues that are really important and not working through them, it leads to this chronic rupture that eventually will lead to irreparable rupture. And so my hope for Stassi and Beau are for them to kind of look at the ways that and this is why, by the way, do you remember on the Valley, which we're going to talk about this in a minute, when Kristen talked about that the therapist said that they should do individual therapy first instead of doing couples therapy? Well, the reason for this is because sometimes we have to do that individual work before we can communicate with our partner or do that work in therapy. And so I think actually doing the couples therapy without doing the individual work may be making issues more challenging, if that makes sense. It may be a setup for failure for them is what I'm saying. And I don't know. I'm not their therapist. I don't know them. I haven't assessed them. But I do tend to notice that people in couples therapy who aren't successful, there's usually some individual work that they have to do. And because she's scared to do that work, it just goes into those same patterns of avoidance, sweeping problems under the rug, and the friend-ivention at the end, which we knew was going to be a super bad idea, real bad idea. But I think the message was good in that if you don't start listening to him and start understanding and meeting his needs, this is going to break and then you're going to be hurting even more. But it was just done really poorly.
Yeah. And, there is an aspect of the way that they're avoiding like the real issues happening that I can 100% empathize with, which is that you have very limited time, as a parent, any type of parent that you are to a human in whatever capacity you are. If you have children you are caring for in your home, there is only so much time you get alone and you want to enjoy that time. So then bringing up any issue that is really bothering you, that is the last goddamn thing you want to do in that moment, even though you need to. And so I can fully empathize with how they both just are like, you know what, let's just get along for a minute here. Let's just keep going.
Right.
And it's like, we will talk about it. And then it never gets talked about because you're like, this is just not the right moment. And you don't want to do anything in front of the kids. You don't. It's almost this vicious cycle that I think actually happens to more people than we would even imagine. I mean, it happens with Jay and I so often where it's like and then you forget about it and until it comes back up again.
Until something happens and it triggers that same wound. And then it's all of a sudden, it's not about Beau leaving while they're decorating the Christmas tree. It's about the fact that like, she's afraid. And by the way, the one moment that I think was the greatest on this entire season was when Stassi was able to get vulnerable with Beau and say, I'm scared. I'm scared that you going back to work will change this beautiful, functioning family that keeps me so safe and feeling loved. Usually behind acting out behaviors is fear, worry, upset, things like that. And so you're totally right. I would actually say humans generally exclusively do this, where you have those moments where it's like you're laying on the couch, you just want to enjoy each other. You don't want to bring up this like very heavy topic. And then, so those are really, really good points. And again, that is where like individual therapy does come in handy, because you're able to talk about that with someone who isn't your partner. Right. So there is such value in talking to a trusted third party who's not your partner that can say, okay, let's tease this apart. This is the part that we need to do something about. This is the venting. This is the trauma. This is your stuff. But all in all, do we know if there's going to be a season 2? Because it certainly seemed like, there's a cliffhanger at the end there.
I would imagine that they will get picked up for a second season. It has not been announced. If they're going to keep the same type of filming schedule, then they likely wouldn't start filming for another month and a half, 2 months. I do know that it's either right now or next month that the whole family is going off to shoot Vanderpump Villa.
Oh,
so
okay.
There might be some coinciding with that. That's the most I know right now.
Gotcha. So there might be some overlap with that. Okay. All right.
I would assume.
Listen, I have to say, I hope it does get another season because to be honest, I think what the Bravo audience today, I think what we love to see, and I know this is not Bravo, I know this is Hulu, but I'm just talking, Stassi's always going to be Bravo to us. What we love to see is we love to see somebody win. We love to see somebody come back and get their, I want to see Stassi get her groove back. I want to see all of these things happen. I would love for her to be able to get to a more vulnerable place so that she can free herself and be happy. Like, I guess if I were her therapist, that's what I would say is like, allow yourself, like remove your own barriers. And sometimes that's really hard to do. And like, for example, I am a therapist, but I can't do it myself because I can do it great for other people, but I can't do it for me and I can't do it for people I love. So, it's just like, I hate to harp on it, but I guess what I just hope for is for her to be happy, for the family to be happy, for everybody to thrive, and for her to be able to name some things that are happening for her so it doesn't get broadly put onto situations that don't serve her, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yes, I believe they'll get picked up for a second season. I know nothing, but I'm thinking that when that happens, there will have been a lot of reflection too. And that's a gift reality TV can give to their cast members, is being able to reflect on your own behavior, your own decisions, your own reactions, and things like that.
Well, and this is a great transition because, it is a good opportunity for that. But only if you watch. Only if you watch, girl. And so let's transition a little bit into the Valley, where we have Luke, the king of king babies, who opted out of watching his own behavior because he didn't want to have to be responsible for himself. So yes, Caitlin, please share. What are your thoughts on the Valley?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Let me start with this. Thank you, Kristen Doty, for talking about postpartum rage. I had no idea what it was when I was postpartum. I felt like I could tear the entire house down. I wouldn't do that because my baby's in the house and he's the most precious thing in the world. But I would suddenly feel like I had roid rage or something. And I don't know what that feels like, but I assume. And I am a female. I have experienced PMS, and sometimes you're being crazy and you just don't care when it's affecting you a lot. And it's just the way it can be sometimes. But that postpartum rage, no one talks about it enough. And I want to applaud her for bringing it up because it's also kind of embarrassing to talk about. Because no female wants to talk about having rage, especially after when they have this tiny infant they're supposed to be caring for. But it is a real thing.
Very real. Very real thing. Yes.
I am very concerned for Kristen and Luke. I feel that there have been really great moments for them that they were really putting effort into their communication that I noticed. And that's sometimes when you're really annoyed, that is so hard to do. Like, I am trying to effectively fucking communicate with you. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really feel as though we had seen a concerted effort in that regard from the two of them in their relationship until this part. And I think I empathize so much with Kristen because I know whenever Jay and I got divorced when my son was 18 months old, my postpartum experience and having a newborn and our conjoined experience with that was probably the hardest time in my life. And I know if it was that way for me, it was likely that way for Jay as well. And, people can tell you all day long what it's going to be like, but short of it just kind of scaring you, you don't know until you go through it. And it doesn't affect every single person the same way. So some of it too is like, why would I want to scare someone if it may not be something they have to experience? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think part of it is, listen, when we are having those hormones raging in and out, I mean, they drop out the second you give birth, and you feel kind of fine for about 48 hours, and then suddenly you just don't feel like the same person at all because you're not.
Right. One thing that I have to share on this is that, so when I was 17, I had ovarian cancer. So I lost my ability to have children, but I had a hysterectomy and I went into medical menopause when I was 17 overnight,
Oh my
like
God.
that. Right. And so what I can tell you is that when the lack of hormones, I literally felt a rage. I felt like I had bipolar disorder, and I'm a person who, I'm not a yeller. I grew up with a lot of yelling and a lot of rage and a lot of anger. I am not that person. It turned me upside down. And that was from the sudden lack of hormones, which again, it's not the same thing. But I'm just trying to express to people that when we have these medical things that change our hormones and our body like this overnight, it affects your mental health and your emotional health in ways that it's actually painful and it's very hard to describe. So I can fully appreciate and understand not only what you're saying, but what Kristen was saying. And because of misogyny, women are so afraid. God forbid we have rage. God forbid women have rage, because then all of a sudden, what are people going to label us? Are they going to label us a psychopath? Are they going to label us a bad parent, this or that? And so, yes, I think that one of the greatest things Kristen did was bring postpartum mental health to the forefront. I ended up doing an episode about like the Lindsay Clancy trial and postpartum mental health, which, by the way, you can listen to, is free and available everywhere. But the one thing that I learned is that 11% of NIH funding, 11% is dedicated to women's issues. And when I say women's issues, that is all of women's issues. Do we understand what we're saying here? So the point is that there are these postpartum experiences that happen. It is not recognized maybe in the DSM. So how can you have a framework to treat something if it's not in the DSM? Then you add in the societal stigma, and then you add in like lack of knowledge, research, and treatment. And then women are like, well, I guess this is it now. I guess this is just what my life is like. And that is not okay. And that's just not true. It's not true.
Yeah. And you factor in if you have a child that doesn't sleep. And that was me. I felt like I was losing my mind. And you do from lack of sleep. You can't function without sleep. It's imperative, And listen, Luke has to remember he is in a relationship with a woman who's older than him. She has passed most of that partying. She just doesn't, she's been there, done that. You just don't care at a certain point. It just doesn't feel fun. Like, I don't want to be around a bunch of 25-year-olds who are partying, every other weekend. That's just it's not interesting anymore. It used to be a long time ago, but it's not now. Right. And you just kind of want to be comfortable at a certain point. And I think, Luke, it feels to me as though he almost resents Kristen for the fact that he's in LA. And
he does. Yes.
Yeah. Does. And, I get it. It's hard with now having a child to just go take off and go wherever. It was really odd to me that he wouldn't do Watch What Happens Live with Kristen. If his mom could go there, why couldn't his mom go to California and look after the baby? I don't know if that would have been too much. I'm wondering why they didn't have that as a possibility if the nanny wasn't available, which happens,
Right. And for those who don't know what Caitlin is talking about, if you didn't see this, Luke, literally, we find out at the reunion that Luke and Kristen were set to do Watch What Happens Live together, and the nanny was out of town. And so Kristen was like, well, let's bring Kaya. And he was like, no, because I want to go out to dinner and I want to have fun in New York. And I can't do that with the two of you. And I was just like, like Shannon Bedore. I was like, that is so insane that it's like you want to have a child, but you don't want any of the changes that come along with that. You don't want any of the changes with Kristen's body or her mental health. Like all of that is not acceptable. And then you're trying to say you can't go out to dinner and have fun with your wife and your child. I'm literally stuttering here because it's so wild to me how he lacks the awareness, the insight, and the empathy to understand how he continues to really hurt her. And one of the things that I noticed, Caitlin, is that Jesse, Luke, and Danny, they all use the same term. They say it reads or it read. So they're using semantics to talk about how the behavior looks over what the behavior is, and then addressing that. It's like a very subtle semantic way to distance yourself from your behavior, right? I know her face. You're like, oh, yeah. Because Luke keeps talking about how his behavior's read a certain way, and it's like, forget how they read. You're breaking your wife's heart. Well, not wife.
I mean, when he said that bit about, and when they were in therapy about he hadn't met pregnant Kristen yet. You motherfucker.
Yikes.
I can't fathom how that would have felt. And this is not one of those things where you're supposed to love me at my worst, which people can use as you're supposed to love me even if I'm being an asshole, right? Which is not what that means. That is being a partner to someone at the hardest time. It's like Kristen was having to wear a diaper at the amusement park. I knew exactly what that was. And I've had to explain this to other people who haven't, had kids or even been close enough to someone who knows what it's like to have kids, I guess, is the only thing I can assume. But, after you give birth, no matter how that child is brought into the world, you're wearing those pads in the diaper for a while. And even beyond that, I remember I think McCoy was, I don't know, I'm going to guess like 3 weeks old. I started laughing at something. And when I tell you I have never experienced completely peeing my pants where I couldn't stop it. It kept going. And it happened to me twice.
Oh my God.
2 different occasions. And so it's like your wife can't even control what's happening with some of her bowels. And you're going to act like 6 weeks is way too long to wait for sex. Go buy yourself a fleshlight or use your hand. I don't give a shit. Right now, if you want to be able to continue having sex with her in the future, that is what you're going to have to deal with. And I will say, I appreciate that Danny and Nia pointed out that it was 6 months after her first child before they were intimate at all in that regard. And that is not unusual.
No, Danny said it very oddly stated. And so people misheard it and misunderstood it.
Yeah.
But what he was saying is whoever came up with the 6-week rule should be fired, but meaning it takes much more than 6 weeks in terms of like a woman's body. First of all, it's just like the psychological, your body changed overnight, right? The hormones, you have incisions, cuts, the uterus, everything is healing. But then also your body is being used to keep a human alive, whether you breastfeed or not, right? It's just everything
you still have to feed them
after a child, right? Everything changes after a child is born. And so I think for me, what is frustrating to many fans is that Luke clearly, it's one thing to not understand how your life is going to change after a child, but it's another thing to just be so ignorant to believe that there's a going back to anything. When you have a family, like let's say you and Jay, right? Before McCoy was born, it's the two of you. And then you throw this little third person into the dynamic and the whole dynamic changes because it's not just the two of you anymore. And so it's just like from a family therapy perspective, these are just facts that it's wild that he doesn't understand. But what bothers me is the willful ignorance of, okay, people are trying to tell him, and he is still like, I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. And so my theory is that, when we were talking about therapy, Kristen said, well, our therapist said that he's not ready for couples therapy. And people were like, is this real? And I was like, yes, it's real. And here are circumstances that can lead to this. But one of the major circumstances is if one partner has a lack of awareness, accountability, and readiness to change, to be honest. And I think my guess is that Luke went to this therapist thinking that he would be right. And the therapist was like, you aren't right. And he's like, no, I don't like this anymore. And this is not right. Right. So, because I think there is this thing with Danny and with Luke where it's a willful ignorance of like, if you're going to a professional and this is what the professional is telling you, for you to say, well, you don't know what you're talking about and I don't want to do this anymore and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you might want to look at the fact that you don't know everything and humble yourself to be aware that you don't know it all. That's kind of what annoys me about Luke,
Yeah. And I think it's all the more frustrating because it's easy to see where there was that potential in him. And I don't know what happened that it's almost like he kind of shut down. And and yes, because you've been going both of them, it's not just Kristen. They both have been going through a very difficult season. And that's the thing everyone keeps trying to tell them, at that time. And Kristen is saying they're good now, but some of the reactions Luke had during the reunion didn't really read that way to me.
Exactly. Like when she said, we're not moving to Colorado, the rage that came across on his face. And I'm going to be honest, I am very attentive to those facial shifts and things like that. And the look on his face, I could tell that this is going to be a fight later. But he doesn't understand that, like, you agreed to have a child with this woman. And this is the downside of sweeping things under the rug and saying, we'll figure it out later. Well, when there's a new human here and your life is now here, well, now this is later and you have created this. But he doesn't want, he wants it to all be Kristen. That's my major issue. He wants it to all be her and it's none of his stuff. And it's like, you either have to leave this relationship or accept that this is where your life is right now. Even if this is not what you agreed upon, whatever it is, like, you have to accept that. And I just think he won't accept it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It is hard to watch sometimes because it's like, like I said, again, they are in the toughest time, right? They were in the toughest time. And again, Kristen was saying that things were better, but it had been noted that Andy read off the teleprompter, at least in the extended uncensored version, that the wedding was permanently postponed. And also Luke has to consider what would Kristen do for work out here in Denver, Colorado. His home isn't even in Denver. It's like much farther out because Colorado is rather large. And, it's not as big as California, obviously, but what would does he expect there to be the same level of income as there has been? And because her job is there in Southern California. So I don't know what he expects. I'm just very confused by it.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I think it hurts Luke's ego that Kristen is the breadwinner. I think Luke has a very specific idea. I want that to read as toxic of what it means to be a man. And this is something too with House of Stasi where it's like, if a woman is the breadwinner and she's a mother and the father is doing that work that's traditionally done by women, well, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. But the men who sign up for this, if they feel something's inherently wrong with that, well, that's an issue. And I think it hurts Luke's ego. I think Luke is a little red-pilled or a lot red-pilled, and he has this very toxic idea of what it means to be a man. And that is also why he gravitates towards Danny, because I think Danny is surrounded by patriarchal messages about what it is to be a man and to be a head of the household. And, I think that's a huge stumbling block for them as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's And I had been seeing a lot of chatter about that specifically with Luke. And that's the thing is it's kind of exhausting what's now expected of mothers in general, that we are expected to mother. And this is not a new concept, that we are expected to mother as though we don't have another day job, like a job we earn an income from. And we are supposed to work at our job that we earn an income from as if we are not a mother. And then we are supposed to be wives as though we don't have just the children and a job. And then at the same time, we are then expected to also support our partners while they go to work in the way that our parents were able to when we're not able to do that anymore. Right. This is not the economy that you can have a single income household any longer. It's impossible. Nope, and unless you're in the 1%, which
which we are not.
Which that was me flipping off those people with my eyes, because that shouldn't even exist, in my opinion.
So spread the wealth, assholes. Let's not have
it shouldn't be possible.
No,
it should not be
insane.
Possible.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think I just keep waiting for that moment where it's gonna click for more people, and it seems like we've still got a while for that, unfortunately. And what I did appreciate also from last night, today's Friday, excuse me, whatever night it was while it wasn't a truce, it was a mutual compassion that Janet and Danny had for each other with the online harassment, which I cannot stand that. Like, guys, come on.
I know. Ugh. And I posted about this because I think what's important right now is, as content creators, we have to condemn this behavior, because it is not acceptable. And I said this on my Instagram. We can dislike, first of all, we don't know these people, okay?
100%
Second of all,
right there.
We can dislike people, their characters or whatever, without being heinous trolls. Like, threatening someone's life is absolutely unhinged. And I've literally said, people who are doing that, you need to close the computer or your phone, run to therapy and figure out why you're not focusing on yourself and you're over focusing on other people. So I'm glad that you're bringing this up, because it is scary and unhinged. I'm not a Danny fan, but I want Danny to thrive, because I want his kids to thrive. I want Nia to thrive. I want everyone to be happy. That family needs him. This is crazy that people are doing this. But to your point, I'm sorry, I just had to talk about that.
No. And listen, there is some positivity to be said regarding the mirror that can be held up when you are that absolutely heinous in your own behavior right in front of the entire world. And he needed to have a mirror held up to him. He did not need to receive threats of any kind, neither did Janet. Okay, period, end of story. That said, I appreciated that they could both just put some of that aside for a moment to acknowledge that. And, I think I felt whenever Jasmine said, why is this something that's said throughout the entire season, blaming everything on the kids? We're tired, da-da-da. And I know at first I went, excuse me? And then I stopped and thought about it when she got emotional, and there was a little thing she said. She wants to have kids, and they're scaring her. I've seen so many people online. These people are scaring me about having children.
Yeah.
And I felt bad about the backlash, because you know what it reminds me of, to bring us full circle, is that feeling kind of like with what Stassi would do. She kind of lashed out because she's scared. She's just scared. Right. She's like, but this is what I've spent my whole life wanting, was to be married to a wonderful partner and to have children with that wonderful partner. And she looked genuinely terrified. Like, am I going to be act like these people that are acting crazy and like monsters because of the kids? Like, what? And I think there's something that needs to be said about this, that once again, is having children for everyone? No. I will absolutely back up anyone who says not for me.
Yep.
Yes.
That's okay. Yep.
I will support that. At the same time, no matter how badly you want them, the first time you experience a kid, that there are some rough, there's no sleep.
It's hard. It's hard.
Issues.
It's hard.
It's going to be hard, but it's not that way forever 99% of the time. Are there certain exceptions to the case? Yes, I will not ignore that. But they are showing you the most dramatic part of being a parent. If I knew all the things that I was going to go through, all the difficulty, all the exhaustion, all the stress, strain, emotional toll it would take on me having my son, and then still someone were to ask, would you do it again? I would do it again in a heartbeat because there's nothing. I love him to the ends of the earth, and I would never take any of it back. And even if someone tried to tell me to. So my point is, I see so many people fearful now of having a family.
Right.
And you don't need to be. Is it hard a lot of times? Yes. Was it not hard sometimes in your own family growing up? Probably. Everyone has even the best families have moments. So I just want to add that in.
Of course. No, I love that you talked about this because I think Jasmine gets really short shrift a lot. Just in general, people don't listen to her. And sometimes I think the problem is she wasn't articulating it well. Mm-hmm. I will say that. She wasn't articulating it well. And it led to people to react to it. But what she's saying is actually right in that, number one, it is scary to hear about these trials and tribulations, but to your point, nothing worth having is easy. Literally anything in life. And so sometimes to get this amazing stuff, you have to go through some challenging things, and parenting is the same. But she's also right in that as a parent, you can't continue to make excuses about your behavior, which is, I think, what she was trying to say as well. Where as a parent, you still have to be accountable when you're an asshole. Okay, are you sleep deprived? Sure. And here's the example that I'm going to use is I'm a cancer patient. I'm a forever cancer patient. I have a lot of health issues. A lot of the times I feel like death. And sometimes when I go out in public, people piss me off. But I don't get the right. Cancer isn't a card to just be a permanent asshole. That's what I'm going to relate this to, right? Nor is parenting. Nothing is a card to say, I have special needs and challenges and the world has to bend to my will. That's not how this should go. And I think it was really unfair how people jumped on her because both of these points I think are really, really fair. She's scared and you need to be accountable for your behaviors. Like Danny continuing to say he's sleep deprived. Well, you keep saying you want more kids. So that's part of it. And if you're going to be sleep deprived and just act like an asshole, well, then you got to stop having kids or you got to do some work. I don't know what to tell you, but it's not okay to just continue to say, well, I'm sleep deprived.
I agree. Now, when I was sleep deprived, oh my God, that was a different type of sleep deprived. But at the same time, if I was already that sleep deprived, I would not have been like, okay, woo, let's bring another one in.
That's what I'm saying. Like you have choices to make based on your life circumstances. And if you're making the choice to continue to have all these children, despite the fact that you're having trouble managing it, like Luke wants to do, well, stuff's going to get worse. Like that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But again, it's like the burden placed on these women, the emotional burden, the labor of like all of it. I think it does speak to like a greater issue in society where the expectations for women are ridiculous and for men, the bar's in hell. If I'm being
basically. I cannot disagree at all.
So what else from the reunion? You know, the Jasmine stuff, that was important. The Luke stuff was important. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that really stuck out to you?
You know, not off the top of my head. Those things were just so like blaring in my mind at that point that, you know, I think there were little comments made here and there about other things that I think I'm going to have to assume we're going to get more resolution on in the part 3 because I guess we're doing 3 parts. So that's just kind of.
In part 3, I assume we're going to, so where it left off is we're going to talk about Danny's drinking. He, you know, said that he looked at his relationship with alcohol because he did watch the show. And listen, I'll give Danny that credit. If you watched the show, great. If you used it as a mirror, great. But I want to see, is that just talk or is he really letting that in? And his, I'll find out next week.
So watch what happens.
That's right. We'll have to watch what happens. And so for everyone listening to this, don't worry. So this is the season finale. However, next week, I am going to do a bite-sized bish specifically about the Valley Reunion Part 3 because your girl wants to talk about addiction, alcohol use, the whole thing. So I will be bringing that to you next week. But Caitlin, thank you so much for being here today. This has been really lovely. And I'm just grateful that you're here for the season finale, girl.
Melissa, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to be here with you. Truly.
Well, guess who's coming back when I start up next season? You. So
good. I'll be here with bells on.
Yes, we'll have a lot to talk about when I come back. But for now, can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yes, at Besties by Caitlin, and Caitlin is spelled Caitlin. Sorry, I'm in the middle of trying to fight a sneeze. Excuse me. And that's the same on both Instagram, Threads, and also on TikTok.
Yes. And this is a good time to end because your poor sinuses need a break. So,
I mean,
yes,
God
please go
them.
check her out. Besties by Caitlin. Your content is amazing. Truly, you stay up to date with everything. Please go check her out. Of course, don't forget to check your girl out at Your Bish Therapist on Instagram. Yes. Please check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/Your Bish Therapist. And, for today, I'm going to say until season 7, take care. Ta-ta for now. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.